Time and time again, you prove that you just not fucking built for this.
Do you think about anybody else but yourself for once in your fucking life? Okay, I was out of this shit, and I doubled back to save your ass, and I lost my fucking family over it. My life is falling apart, and I can't even talk about it because it never trumps the latest Tariq crisis.
So, with only 5 episodes left when it comes to the world of Power Book 2 Ghost, at this moment in time, a lot of us have a lot of questions, but not enough answers, and I really am intrigued to see how they end the story for one character in particular, Brayden Weston. Now, I have been sitting on some information for a while, until I actually did a breakdown for Brayden's character. We've been through every character arc and plot one by one in detail every Sunday, but a while ago on July the 7th, I did tap into a certain TikTok live that Gianni did, where he gave a few clues in regards to what we can expect for his character in part 2. I only caught the live for around 20 minutes or so, and I was only able to catch a bit of what he said. So if anybody was listening from the beginning, and if I have missed anything, then just let me know in the comment section. But that's the topic of today's breakdown, Brayden Weston, his evolution, his relationships, how he's going to have some tough decisions to make, who he could potentially lose, and generally what I would have loved to have seen from his character if we were getting a season 5. Along with the clues from what he said in the TikTok live from All Things Ghost Season 4 Part 2. Now when it comes to Book 2 Ghost, we all know how they move the storylines forward pretty quick, provide us with twists and turns and flip the chessboard upside down, especially compared to other shows like Raising Kanan. But one character that they have taken their time in terms of his growth, development and evolution in the streets is Brayden Weston. Ever since Season 1, I feel like the writers really did take the patient approach. They didn't just give him a gun in Season 1 and have him commit murders or hit licks, because that's just not who Brayden is or how he was brought up. He was someone who was brought up by a very wealthy family who had extensive ties to those in politics. Whatever he could dream of, he could have, because of who the Westons were, how much money they had, who they had in their back pocket, and also because of how much weight the Weston name held. And throughout Seasons 1 and 2, we saw how he used the Weston name to his advantage, whether it be having Scott expelled from Stansfield, which allowed him and Tariq's operation to take over, driving with product in his trunk, or outing himself as a CEO of Course Correct in court, knowing he was protected. He knew because he was a Weston, he was somewhat untouchable, at least in some aspects. However, towards the end of Season 3, they began to take that away from him when he started to uncover the real truth about what Weston Holdings really was, a Ponzi scheme. He was then put into a really sticky situation where he then had to choose between his street family or his actual family, who frankly wasn't afraid to throw him under the bus to save his own skin. Eventually he did make the right choice, but Lucas Weston left a lot of damage. The Weston name no longer held the weight that it once did, and because of Brayden's involvement in the drug game, he was also disowned from his family who have now left New York. So they've slowly started to take everything away from Brayden, which does also come down to his loyalty to Tariq. He ended his 1 foot in, 1 foot out commitment to the game when he burst into Nomad's warehouse, spraying bullets to rescue Tariq. And in Season 4, they teased that they were going to explore Brayden's journey from a thrill-seeking son of a privilege to becoming a more pragmatic man who deals drugs for necessity, not pleasure, and ultimately embraces the violence he'll need to survive in this new life.
I'm finally good at something, Reek. This is my thing.
So, you wanted to be in this shit? Well, sometimes there's going to be consequences and sacrifices you have to make. And with that being said, that brings me on to his relationship with Elle. In Season 4, if you guys have noticed, Brayden's kind of been on his own. He's been disowned by his family, Tariq is selfish and always looking out for his own self-interests. Effie flipped over to the other side, and Rebecca, she's not exactly in the right frame of mind either, which is also why I feel like he's gravitated to the drugs he sells, and also the relationship with Elle, where he did begin to pillow talk just like Tommy once did with Holly. However, just like Holly once betrayed Tommy, and how her death really fucked Tommy up, honestly, I am expecting the same for Brayden Weston. And this brings me on to something he mentioned in his TikTok live. He said, how do you have Brayden's character turn dark? You have him doing coke, you have him lose loved ones or a family member. That's how you get to the crazy Brayden. And he also did say in part 2, Brayden is going to be crazy. So, we've seen a couple of scenes from the teasers for part 2, where Brayden is going to be on his business, and where no doubt, he is going to find himself in a position where he may even have to pull the trigger, which could even extend to Elle. We don't know if Brayden will do it himself, be forced into doing it, whether she betrays him like Holly did with Tommy, whether it's an accident, an overdose, being caught in a crossfire, or snitching, who knows. I mean, we can speculate all we want when it comes to Elle's death. The writers can take it in so many directions, but what we do know is, if that does happen, it really will fuck Brayden's mindset up, just like it once did with Tommy, and Tommy is as tough as you get. Again, just like I mentioned during 4 Season 2, Tommy's biggest weakness is love, and in some ways, I also think that is Brayden's. Tommy's never really had many people in his life he could trust or lean on, and that's why he always gravitated to those who showed loyalty or gave him a sense of belonging, and I do feel like Brayden is also getting to that stage. Killing Lucas Weston, being disowned, watching his best friend not show the same loyalty back, where does that leave Brayden? He's on his own, and I'm not surprised as to why he's fallen for Elle and why he continues to confide in her. Simply put, he hasn't got anybody else. But coming back around to her death and what Gianni mentioned in his TikTok live, I do think this is a loved one he does have to lose, which would make him lose himself that much more. And this plot around Elle in part 2 definitely will be at the center of the storm when it comes to Brayden's story arc. There's a reason why they've had Brayden pillow talk to Elle about their operation. There's a reason why Tariq warned Brayden in 405. There's a reason why Zion's been teasing Brayden about him being a tiny Tommy, which we all know he isn't. But could he make a very similar move to that of Tommy and Holly? Because there are a lot of parallels back to Power. Either way, she is going to be a weak link when it comes to Brayden's story arc, and I do expect her to definitely go. It's just how is it going to impact Brayden's mindset, and what is he going to have to do? Now, as we're on the topic of Elle, we do have to revisit the scene where we saw Brayden in hospital looking on at someone who's probably in a life or death situation. Is this Elle, or could it be his sister Rebecca? I do think we can make a very good argument for both, maybe even a potential overdose, so it's just something to definitely keep in mind. I do think it's either one of two, Elle or Rebecca. Now, we all know they have a lot that they need to squeeze into just 5 episodes, and I don't know whether they have time to get around to every single loose end, one of them being Kane versus Brayden.
I don't think we got enough time for that.
I will cut that fucking hand off.
When did baby Rambo's balls drop, huh?
Kay's been manipulating him, teasing him, and bullying him around for a couple of seasons, but as we went through in terms of what Gianni teased, and the turn of Brayden's character, which will no doubt get even worse with the death of Elle or Rebecca, or even both, Brayden is turning into more of a darker character. We also have to remember Brayden was the one who hit Kane at the warehouse towards the end of season 3, and Kane was on the hunt for him towards the beginning of season 4, something I don't think Kane would have forgotten about. So, I do wonder whether they revisit this battle or dynamic between Kane and Brayden. Do they have time for it? I hope so, because I do want to see Kane come face to face with this Brayden, who's going to be a lot more darker and crazier. Someone who's not going to back down or be bullied around. So, let's wait and see whether this plays a part in Brayden's story arc in part 2. I'm hoping it does. But, one thing we definitely do know will play a big part is the potential cracks in his partnership, brotherhood, and friendship with Tariq St Patrick. It has been teased that season 4 was going to find Tariq and Brayden against the world as they form new alliances and find their way back into the game. But when Brayden starts flirting with a new reckless lifestyle, Tariq would begin to wonder if there really is room for two at the top. And it is the last part we need to focus on when it comes to what we should be expecting in part 2. At some point in part 2, even though Brayden is going to be on his business with Tariq, there will come a moment where Tariq begins to wonder if there's room for Brayden as he begins to rise to the top of the food chain. You know, just like Felipe Lobos once said to Ghost, Tommy was holding him back. I do wonder whether Tariq will be thinking something very similar.
Una condición, Tommy. Ven más. Is that way? I don't mean any disrespect, but I'm gonna be honest, your attachment to him is holding you back.
Or will Tariq be sticking by someone who stuck by him through thick and thin? Someone who's lost almost everything just to stay loyal to Tariq? Let's put the shoe on the other foot. If it was the other way around where Tariq had to do what Brayden did, would he? I think we all know what Tariq's decision would be if push comes to shove. He's gonna have to let Brayden go. And I don't mean it in terms of Tariq will kill Brayden. There's no way I think that ever happens. But I can see Tariq telling Brayden he doesn't need him anymore. He's gonna be on his own shit and going in a different direction. Very similar to Ghost in that aspect. It's just what causes this to happen? Will Brayden lose himself to coke? Will Brayden lose himself when Elle is taken off the chessboard? Will Brayden blame Tariq for all that he's lost or will lose, for example Rebecca, Elle, or both? Just like we saw before when they really went at it in season 2 and also in 405. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw them really go at it again at some point in part 2, because they will be having differing opinions on how to move forward and also what their next chess moves are, which probably will be caused by Tariq making moves without consulting with Brayden. He definitely has a history of doing so, and I honestly wouldn't surprise to see him do it again, especially if it comes down to Tariq having to protect Tasha. We all know he'll drop whatever he has to drop to protect that one person that means the world to him, and I do think there will be a lot of issues that come between them in part 2. There's going to be Elle, maybe Rebecca, the drug business, Anya Covington, and also how they go on the offensive. But either way, the point is, There will be moments which will definitely test this relationship like never before, and where they ended season 3 with them being strong and where they showed a togetherness after the warehouse, I feel like towards the end of season 4, it might potentially be the opposite. But let's get to something else Gianni mentioned in his TikTok live. He said season 4 of Ghost was going to be the last we see of Brayden on Power. We're not going to see him going forward in any of the further Power shows or spin-offs, and he did say that with conviction. Again, we always have to be mindful that they could be toying with us, because just have a look at what happened with Joey Badass and his exit interview with his character Unique. They definitely played us, but it does seem like he was serious, which is a shame, especially because we're just now getting into the nitty-gritty with his character, with him turning over to the dark side. But where I feel there are still a few more levels to go. I mean, if there was a season 5 and 6, I would have loved to have seen Brayden's character go to prison, realizing an alternate consequence to the game that he hasn't felt yet, having to survive in that orange jumpsuit, being confined in a small room, seeing the same 4 walls day in, day out, where every bit of your freedom is stripped away from you, where you're governed by others' rules in terms of what time you wake up, when you have your breakfast, lunch, dinner, to when you go to sleep. This is the one position I would love to have seen Brayden in, which I think would have been the next step for his character development if we were getting a season 5. Another storyline which I would love to have seen is Brayden crossing paths with Tommy Egan, which could still potentially be a possibility if Tommy does cross over into Ghost in part 2. I think most of us know there was a deleted scene from OG Power, where Tommy did meet Brayden, which must have been at Choke when Tommy came to Tariq's dorm room, but I would love for them to meet and cross over in the Power world, especially because like I mentioned before, Zion has been teasing he's what Tommy used to be to Ghost, but just for Tariq, and how he's also Tiny Tommy. Whether we see this crossover in the world of Power, I mean never say never, but maybe unlikely based on what Gianni said. But that's where we are when it comes to Brayden's character arc heading into part 2. Gianni says that his character is going to go crazy in part 2, and he's teased in order to do so, he may potentially have to lose loved ones. Where his story ends come the end of season 4, I think this would probably be one which may not leave us satisfied if it is true that they had no idea season 4 was going to be the last, so let's wait and see. But let me know your thoughts and predictions when it comes to all things Brayden Weston down below in the comment section, and as always, thank you guys for watching and I'll see you next time.